so much of weight, taking off with so much of weight. So everything should be clear, everything should be neat in the airport runway. Okay, not only runway, the taxiways, the aprons, the parking bays, everything should be so neat that a small pin might also be a problem for an aircraft. If you've seen a small, paper pin on, if it is there on the runway, the aircraft team or the airport team will quickly clear it off. It is called as an FOD. Okay, foreign object. So they will quickly clear it off, because that will make the aircraft not move forward. So all this flies on a luck, so they don't want that to be happening, and everything is an engine based. So a small thing in the engine also affects the passenger's life or the crew's life. So that is the reason they take care so much. Okay, they are always aware. Now the staffs working in the air sites are very much awake in the night times too. Even the passing staffs which are working in the terminal might be sleeping for some time, because they might get rest for some time, because until and unless the next passenger is coming. But that doesn't work with the airside staff, because they are 24 hours awake, because night time is the major international landings. So every time it's the heavier aircrafts, international flights is the heavier aircrafts, so they needs to be aware always. So there are many kind of situations which I have also faced when I was working in airport. So later on, when time comes, we will start talking about that. Okay. Now moving on, this all things we have learned from the operation department. So this is what the operation department do. Now coming on to the ATC. ATC is a part of the airport. Okay. Then how do they communicate? As I already told you, RT. Okay. Radio transmitters. They speak to the pilots. Okay, not only to the pilots, if they have to convey anything to the terminal staffs, they speak via terminal thing. So they have channels for that. They twist that and they speak to the terminal staff. So that's how it comes. So they see, I've already told you, they learn cockpit communications. They have pilot stations, tower on ground. So everything, they have conversation with these all departments. Then they have a control over the runway light. Okay, so ATC is the one who clearly views everything, who can be seeing everything from the top. They can see which runway light has been gone, where is the crack, everything they can see. So this is the one who checks on that. Now we have an airport staff also who will be doing a regular inspection on the runways too. Okay, now if you see in BIL, we have BIL staff who would be doing if the aircraft is away 20 minutes away, they quickly move on to runway and see if there is any foreign object on the runway, or is there any light being defected. So all these kinds the BIL staffs also check. So you have a staff doing that also. Now, so ATC is 24/7 awake. They are never asleep, so they are always awake. Then it's a very hectic job. It's a very hectic job. Then aircraft pilot will ask permission to start up and to take off. Okay, so everything needs to be moving via ATC. If they even have to start their engine, they need to be asking to the ATC. Then only they are supposed to start. Okay, so even if they need to stop the engine, once they are come in the parking lot, they need to stop the engine. They will have to say to the ATC that so and so aircraft is stopping the engine. So this is the entire view of the ATC. Everything needs to be informed to the ATC. Then only everything related to the aircraft needs to be informing. Now, a staff is boarding a baggage into a particular aircraft. That also needs to be informed, stating that baggages have been removed from the aircraft. Now baggages have been uploading into the aircraft. So everything needs to be informed to the ATC. Next, CNS. CNS, communication, navigational surveillance. Okay. Now these are the systems, whatever comes under CNS, that is your communication systems. So on ground you have transponder and air transmitters, you have radar control, you have approach control, you have tower control. So all this is a part of communication system. Okay, communication and navigation system, airspace regulation, radio aids. your VHS and HF. DVOR, DME is distance measuring equipment. Distance measuring is that if you have heard that there is a pilot saying that we are in so and so altitude, we are in 3000 altitude, flying on 3000 altitude, flying on 3025 altitude. So all these kinds of things is measured through DME. Okay, then DVR is digital voice recording. So whatever has been spoken to the ATC guy, okay, the pilot keeps on recording that also. Even in the ATC department, there is a recorder. NDB is non-directional beacon. So whichever way the aircraft needs to be moving or whichever way it has supposed to be moving is shown by non-directional beacon. GP is glide path. Okay, that is totally on pilot's condition. ILS is your instrument landing system. Okay, PAPI lights. PAPI lights is the end light when the aircraft is landing. At the beginning of the runway, there is a set of lights which would be turning. Okay, those lights are called as PAPI lights. So let's not move detail into that. This is the systems which is actually provided by the AAI. Now civil, that goes to ATC. Civil, whatever is providing is that requirement passed on the terminal. Okay, construction of new infrastructure. If you see, number one, construction of new infrastructure come under the civil. That is, any new projects coming up for an airport comes under civil. Then upgrading the current structures, like if at all there should be an extra facility should be added. Let's say an extra baby care room should be added in a terminal. That also comes under the civil team. Runway specification. So, a parallel runway needs to be built, or let's say there's a crack on the runway which needs to be covered. A base course need to be added. An extra concrete should be put onto the extra concrete should be put onto the runway. Everything comes under civil again. So these three are the main jobs which civil would be doing. Electrical, I already told you, any sort of lights, any sort of switching in the terminal, let's say in the terminal, in the land side, in the air side, everything comes under electrical. Okay. Commercial totally takes care of your marketing. That is, they will check on your advertisements. Okay, if you have seen in the airports, you could see a pole with many such sorts of advertisements coming up. Or let's say there would be, general example of Bangalore airport. If you have seen in your Christmas times, or let's say any festival, particular festival times, you could see that there is a function happening, and in that they would show you a lot of advertisements. Okay, they would put up a big huge board showing the advertisements and things like that. So all those things is done by the commercial. So if any new store needs to be coming up, let's say a KFC needs to be added in the airport, so first and foremost the commercial team should approve that, okay, stating that okay, this particular place, if it comes, it would be good. So then only it goes to the civil, stating that you need to start building up, okay, because that's a new added facility. Okay. Meteorological, I already told you, this takes care of your climate, okay, your weather conditions. If there is any sort of delay might happen, or let's say there is a wind coming up, or there's a heavy rain where the pilot wouldn't be able to land, or there's a heavy turbulence could happen because of the wind, then immediately the meteorological team would say to divert the aircraft. So this is where those kind of team which will state the weather conditions to the pilot. Okay, now the major one kind of thing is that de-icing. Okay, if you're seeing the places where the snow is falling on the runway, they would be covered with snow and it would be a problem for an aircraft to be landing. So in that case, immediately the meteorological team will inform the other teams to clear up the runway, okay, to immediately do a de-icing. So a person from the meteorological team will come and start doing the de-icing, that is clearing of the runway from the snow. Okay, so these are certain equipments which they use. Okay, we are not good at that. Okay, fire safety. Now the other department is your fire safety, aviation fire safety departments. Okay, so they are always located near to the runway. Their department. Their office is always near to the runway. Okay, that's only because and they are actually easily accessible to the main road. Okay, their other opening would be to the main road and one opening to be to the other road. Now why is that? Is only because if there is an emergency, okay, then they would immediately moving into the runway, and if at all something is important nearby places also where the airport radius is there, then they would be going on to that also. Any emergency operation, they need to be reaching the time, they need to be reaching that spot within 1.5 minutes. So think of them, they are always awake, they can't sleep. Okay, so any emergency, they now usually the thing is that they would be ready before. Now if let's say there's a defect in the aircraft, let's say the landing gear is not opening up, okay, the ATC, the pilot is saying to the ATC that I'm not able to open my landing gear and things like that, then ATC will immediately inform the fire and safety team. Okay, so they would be available before the aircraft landing itself. So they are always aware 24/7, like how ATC is there. Okay, but usually they get it rarely, but since it's fire, they are always aware of it, of the thing. Okay, Air India, I told you, this is one of the ground handling agency. Okay, Air India SATs. Okay, Air India handles ticket checking for Emirates, Etihad, and some other aircrafts to Malaysian Airlines and all. So these are the ground handling agencies, what they do according to the thing. So until the final clearance, until the passenger is boarded on the aircraft, everything is done by the Air India. Now, that's just a suggestion for that particular airport. Okay, we don't want to do that. So is this clear? So in general, everything is given by AAI. The entire view of all this is that it is given by AAI. Now, any doubts in that?
No, ma'am.
Is that clear?
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Not clear.
No, ma'am. It's clear.
It's clear, ma'am.
Okay, you have a next topic which is called as aviation law. Okay, I have typed this. I hope just a minute, huh? Just show that. Because aviation law, they have just given you like that. I don't know why that has to be given as a subject, because it's a very huge topic, very, very huge topic. So just a minute. I don't know why they have just given it like that to you. So for you guys, only introduction is far enough, because if you go deep into that, you will not understand anything. So I have typed some of the major points of aviation law. Okay, I will show you a video also of the aviation law. Okay, so you will come to know what aviation law majorly deals with. Now, aviation law is that branch of the law which concerns majorly to the flight. Okay, and they have a set of rules which has been developed by the DGCA. Okay, MOCA handles it. Okay, now if you talk in the other countries, FAA handles, CAA handles, so it is all MA authorities which is handling this. Now if you talk about aviation law, generally it is associated with the flight, air travel. Okay, what are the legal businesses you need to be doing with the aircraft? Okay, the purchasing of an aircraft, how the leasing needs to be done. We know that certain airlines are taking up leasing aircrafts. Okay, they took a lease for the aircraft. That's, for example, your SpiceJet. So your SpiceJet flight is entirely leasing flights. They don't have flights of their own. So they need to be surrounded by certain rules and regulations for leasing. So that also being said in this aviation law. Okay, so if you see that there are certain law which comes under this, if you see there are admiralty law, there are international law. If you say there is something called a space law also, space law totally goes out of the, if an aircraft is moving out of the thing that is totally related to space, so that goes to ISRO. So all these kinds of things comes under aviation. Now, if you see that, as I already told you, to bring this into action in 1944, Chicago Convention brought ICAO into effect. Okay, and then ICAO started implementing this aviation law into the aviation industry. Now, there was a lack. Of course, there was a lack in the uniformity of international law. They didn't know where to implement what. So there was a lot of confusions happening. So what they did is ICAO started something called as Warsaw Convention in 1929. Okay, 1929. This was the first convention happened to bring up this aviation law. Okay, to bring an uniformity in the aviation law. Then later on in 1944, ICAO was brought into existence, where they had to check. This was the agency which had to check majorly on the aviation law, whether all the aviation teams or whether all the aviation nations are following the aviation law. So this was the major thing. Okay, during the World War II, this ICAO was brought into existence. Now, in Tokyo Convention 1963, this enacted new standards. Okay, on Tokyo Convention 1963, this aviation law changed its standards. So before there was less. Then later on, it started changing its, standards, international standards, and how to, what was the penalty, what is the jurisdiction, okay, where should these laws needs to be followed, on which and all aircraft these laws needs to be followed. All these kinds of things was brought on Tokyo Convention. And on Montreal Convention, the carrier liability, that is, if at all an aircraft is carrying how many passengers, 180 passengers, okay, all these liabilities, how many pieces of baggage can be carried, everything was bought in the Montreal Convention. Okay, so there were set of conventions also coming up, okay, based on this aviation law. Now, Aircraft Act 1934. Now, this is one of the major act which we follow. Okay, our aviation follows. Indian aviation follows. This is not an international one. This is an Indian one. So Aircraft Act 1934. Now, Aircraft Act 1934 is a huge, you have a huge set of document for this, consisting about 164 papers. Okay. Now, if I give you all that, you are not learning aviation law as a subject. You are learning it inside a subject. So it is just an introduction. So Aircraft Act is that kind of act which states totally on what kind of aircraft needs to be hired, okay, or leased. And what is the set of jurisdiction if there is a problem in hiring? That is, if you are misusing it, what is the jurisdiction you will be facing? What is the penalty you will be facing? So for everything, penalty is for max to max. Everything, the penalty goes up to 2 years of jail. Okay, 2 to 3 years of jail would be there. So if you are misusing these laws, then obviously the penalty would be that. Okay, 2 to 3 years of
Ma'am, excuse
imprisonment.
me.
Tell me.
Yes, ma'am, is this aviation law should be followed by all the organizations in aviation or only IATA?
No,
They implement this?
aviation law should be followed by every airline, airports, everything. Whichever comes under aviation. Even the travel agency should be following the aviation law. Okay?
Okay.
And
That is
same
what
goes for
I...
military also, no, ma'am? Same goes for military also.
Same goes for military also, because aviation law even states about your airspace also. So that is what I'm telling you. In this Aircraft Act 1934, I told you it's a huge set of papers, okay, a huge set of documents which says you'll have to do this, you'll have to, like your amendments and annexes, right? Your sub-annexes, amendments, this is the amendment, you need to be following. All these things is there. So that is the reason I don't want to go deep into it, because you have a PDF consisting of, now if I say these are all the rules, if you see this, Aircraft Act is the major one. That is the reason I put it in red. If you see this, these are all the, aviation law rules. Each consists of approximately 204 papers each. Aircraft Act 1934 204, Aircraft Carriage of Dangerous Goods 204. So every rule, every act here is having a set of 204 papers. So in general, we usually used to learn, aviation law as a separate subject because it is a little complicated subject, and that won't come in your introduction. Okay. And so I believe they have given you just for an introduction to that particular subject. Okay, you might be getting it later on, might be. It's a really complicated subject. You have a lot to learn in that. So this is where I'm given only for introduction. Okay, so the Aircraft Act generally is the head of all this. Okay, this includes everything. Under that comes your Aircraft Act, how you need to carry the dangerous goods, okay, the dangerous good regulations, as in how the packing needs to be done, what is the procedures, where you need to be storing it, all those things comes under the carriage of dangerous goods. The aircraft demolition of obstructions caused by building and trees. This is where your terminal comes into action. Okay, they say that approximately 30 kilometers away should be a house being built next to the airport. 30 to 40 kilometers, I believe. So near to the airport, there shouldn't be any trees. Okay, high trees. Okay, which will obstruct the way of aircraft, or there shouldn't be any highly built buildings near to the airport which will obstruct the way of aircraft. So these particular rule, the second rule, okay, demolition of obstruction states about that. Okay, but the airport is having a right to demolish those kinds of buildings or those kind of trees, okay, to prevent the aircraft flown. So now if you see in any airports, the view for landing of the aircraft is very clear. That's only because there is no buildings or no trees of that particular height. Okay, so they take care of that. That rule states clearly on that. The aircraft investigation of incidents. So there is crash on air, or let's say the landing there was some issue and they had happened a crash, or let's say there was a bird hit. So all these things, what and all rules you need to be following, okay, while reporting this particular cases is mentioned in this particular the aircraft investigation of accidents and incidents. The next one is the aircraft public health rules. So under this rule comes your COVID-19 also. So you need to be knowing what and all is the new implementation which the health or the government department has brought up. Security rules, of course, for your security. Okay, what and all you need to be following. It is, now I'll tell you, it is not only for the passengers. It is also based on the passengers. It is also based on the airline. It is also based on the aircraft. So damaging, let's say damaging a seat belt or onto the aircraft is also damaging of a property, right? You would be imprisoned for that also. So for everything you have jurisdictions, for everything you have penalties. Okay, Aircraft Rules 1937. Now after this Aircraft Act 1934, the next major thing which the India follows as Aircraft Rules 1937. So this is the another major important kind of thing which will majorly states on what kind of rules you need to be checking up if an aircraft is flying abroad. Okay, if it is leaving from India to other country, what is the rules it needs to be following, or if at all other registration aircraft, let's say now other registration is where, let's talk about EK, Dubai aircraft, okay, it's flying into India. What and all is the procedures they needs to be following when landing in India. Now, blindly you can't fly into a country. Yeah, it is having certain policies. It is having certain regulations which the aircraft needs to be following. Okay, so that also should be followed by the other countries. Now, if an Indian aircraft is flying to Dubai, also Indian aircraft should be following the Dubai's condition also. So that is where the aircraft rules comes into action. So everything is clearly given up. So every act here or every rules here consists of 204 papers. PDF. It is a huge manual kind of thing. Manual, I told you, it's a document kind of thing. It's a book which will be given to every airport. So every this set kind of things is actually placed in every airport. It needs to be placed because that is a rule by the ACN. Okay. Next, you have the Ministry of Civil Aviation height restrictions, safeguarding of aircraft operation. So under this aircraft rules, these rules was the rule which was recently brought. I told you any obstruction would be taken care. Now this is an amended rule of the other act which I already told you. This one, 1994, aircraft demolition of obstruction. So this, the Ministry of Civil Aviation amended this, and they brought again with a new set of rules, with a new set of standards on 2015. Okay, so that's the one. Now under aviation law comes your conventions too. So we have a set of, we still have a lot of conventions, but I have mentioned only the important conventions. That is your Chicago, your Montreal, your Warsaw, your Hague, Tokyo, Geneva, and Rome. Okay, Geneva, Rome, and all is the small conventions. The major conventions is Chicago, Montreal, Warsaw, Hague, and Tokyo. Okay, so these are the conventions. Now this is just the introduction for the law, aviation law. I have the conventions because you are supposed to learn about the conventions in this. So I have the conventions PPT next. So is there any doubt in this word format? Any doubt in the word?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, then
Ma'am, can you show the last screen, please, once again, ma'am?
which one?
Last screen, ma'am. Last screen.
I started 1 minute. Last screen is this Chicago, Montreal, Warsaw, Hague. I'll tell you about the conventions. I have next one, conventions itself. Don't write everything in which is there. It's just for your notification. I'll show you the convention PPT. Don't worry.
Okay, ma'am.
I believe there is nothing on your screen right now.
No, ma'am.
Let's check it. Where is it? What I told you? Okay, law conventions. My God, I tend to forget things. Okay. There you go, conventions.
Ma'am, this is the second unit, law part. Second unit.
No. It's the very first unit itself. I have not completed the first unit. Still it's there. I would be completing it very quickly, if God permits, huh? Okay. Civil aviation conventions. So first and foremost, the Warsaw Convention. Okay. So just briefing it up. You can see underneath this one. Okay. This is the brief of Warsaw Convention. Okay. This was started for the unification of certain rules. Okay. They wanted to interconnect it. So that is the reason this Warsaw Convention was brought into action. Okay, so they signed on 12th October 1929. Location was in Warsaw. Effective 13 February 1933. Parties was 152 members attended this. Depository was Government of Poland. Okay, Government of Poland was the depository for this particular convention, and the language was French. So don't worry, don't make a note of it. The PPT will be posted. Don't worry. Okay. Now Warsaw Convention.
Ma'am, you have to remember these dates, no? 13 February.
You need to be. You need to be remember. There's no need as in how it came into effect, but you need to be remembering when it was signed, because that is something important.
Okay, ma'am.
So the rule was once any of the convention has been signed, Okay, it needs to be implemented immediately. So since it goes via many procedures, the implication was a little late for all of the conventions. Okay, so you need to know when it was signed. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Now, International Convention, which regulates liabilities for international carriage of persons, luggage, or goods performed by an aircraft or radar. So this is the one why the first point was the one why Warsaw Convention was conducted for. Okay, the reason. And what was the particular issues which they had, that is mandates carriers to issue passenger tickets, require carriers to issue bags. So this was the very first convention when the airlines were started. Okay, so as in you can't blindly start up an aircraft and passenger is moving in, like how you get into a bus, bus with his luggage, buying a ticket on board and moving. No. So Warsaw Convention brought into effect that this whole thing needs to be done when a passenger is flying in the aircraft. Okay, he needs to be purchasing the ticket prior time. He needs to be checking before time. He needs to be going to the boarding gate. He needs to be showing his boarding pass. So all these kinds of things. So 30 kgs bag is allowed, 20 kgs bag is allowed, 7 kgs in hand baggage. Everything was actually said by the Warsaw Convention. Okay, so this was the convention which brought that into action. Now, clauses 17 and 19 are very important for us. Okay, in aviation, that is where the any product damage. Let's say the passenger bag has been damaged. Okay, let's say now there is a pilferage happened. Someone has opened the bag of the zip of the bag. Then in that case, any damage caused to the property of the passenger needs to be payable by the airline. Okay, so the airline is liable for any damage caused to the passenger baggage. Okay, airline companies will not be held responsible if the baggage has the default for